guys hear that?
Is that me?
Now if I can get it to stop. There we go. So I don't know if you heard that music or not. Ah. Stop. There we go. Okay. Thanks for showing up, guys.
Sure.
Dale Donovan should be showing up here in a few minutes, but Jason, I knew you were going to be here for the first half hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I would start by kind of asking you some little interview questions. For those who aren't familiar with what's going on here, this is the d6xd6 Core RPG Kickstarter Countdown Party. We have just under 2 hours left for the Kickstarter, and I thought it might be kind of fun to get together and hang out in a Google Hangout. And my wife is... Okay, well, you can turn it off.
How do you turn it off? Can I just shut the lid or something? No.
Hang on just a second, guys.
Okay.
Just click and shut off the browser.
Give me 1 second. I'm going to shut my door. My dogs are going crazy.
All right. That's perfect. So, Mike, you got no crisis going on your side there?
Not yet. Give me time. It'll get there.
Do you guys know how to use lower thirds?
I'm gonna
Hey,
go
Scott.
Yes, I do. I'll set one up in just a second.
Okay. And I know Scott does. Mike, if you mouse over the left-hand side of your screen, there should be a toolbar pop up, and there are several suggested apps there. There's one that looks like a toolbox, and if you mouse over it, it actually says Hangout Toolbox, and click on it. It should install, and then if you click on your face on the right-hand side, there's an option for creating a little, it's called a lower third. You can put your name and things like that on there so people who are watching know who you are.
Ah.
And I know about this only because I've been using it for doing some role-playing sessions online. So this is all pretty new to me too.
I think I updated recently. It's Hangout Toolbox, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm installing it. I guess I have to reinstall it.
Yeah, you can do it through the Toolbox, or there's actually a Dice app, but Toolbox is probably the best place to do it.
Okay.
Ah. I think I found it.
And somewhere here, I should have a Q&A thing. There we go. Hi, Shay. Can you hear us? I see one person in the Q&A thing.
Q&A. I'm opening. Ah, yes.
Okay, so how do I do this? Everything's so weird. Chris Reed is on in the side. Oh, great. And I see that I answered and actually said Shay's name correctly, so that's great. All right. Well, there's proof of concept. We can actually see people respond in the text over there. I don't know if you guys have the Q&A going on or if that's just me, but
I see it. Yes. I don't know if I can add anything to it. Is that just for you?
I am. That's a good question. I don't know. This is, as I say, this is brand new for me as well. So let me ask a couple of questions of you, Jason, since your time's kind of limited. The first thing is, can you give us a background about your particular setting, Citizen in the Temple? Kind of give an elevator pitch of what it's all about?
Sure. Probably the briefest way to put it would be 1984 on a wasteland planet. And it kind of evolved throughout some screenwriting I did in film school. I did a short film, a short sci-fi film, and I just really had a good time with a lot of the concepts, and it kind of evolved out of that. I wanted to do sort of a more futuristic, sort of steampunk dark sun. Actually, I have to admit, a lot of my I played a lot of that growing up, and I really enjoyed it. And one thing that stuck with me about it was the just the amount of mystery involved. And so I kind of took that and took it into a slightly different setting, and just sort of have been working with it ever since.
Okay. And for people who aren't familiar with it, Dark Sun, done by Timothy Brown, and Tim also has a setting. Hiya, Dale. Tim also has a setting in the core Kickstarter, the Dragon Lord setting, which is a spiritual successor, I guess, to Dark Sun. I got to get used to seeing these questions pop up on the right-hand side. So, Jason, do you see the one?
Yes, that would be Orwellian 1984. So we have sort of a the totalitarian state. There's one city, that one major city left on this planet. The city doesn't really have a good sense of itself and of its own history. You know, there's ruins out in the wasteland with technology that's higher than anything that they're used to using. So there's a lot of opportunity for exploration.
Okay. The second question I was going to ask you is, I know that you've been working on the on your chapter already for your setting chapter for the project. What adaptations are you having to do to the core system, or additions are you having to do to the core system to make that work?
To adapt the world into this game?
Yeah.
It's actually been very, very useful for me, because since the beginning of the idea of the film, you know, it's been kind of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of process. And just because the film that I'm working on is my MFA thesis film, so I mean there is a schedule there that must be kept. So what this has allowed me to do is kind of take a step back and actually do a lot of good world building that I had not had the time or opportunity to do yet. So in terms of adapting it into the world, it's been fine. It's been no problem because I get to invent it now for the game.
Okay. I'm getting an echo from somebody here.
I just thought that was your voice. Oh,
I muted myself.
there we go.
All right, Dale was the one who showed up most recently. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and I'm not getting that echo. So, Dale, I will unmute you in a little bit, but apparently we're getting the echo out of your system. Not sure why or how you have your speakers set up, but yeah, you're muted, buddy. Okay, so Jason, back to the questions here.
Sure.
How did you get started writing or creating? You're one of the guys in this list of settings who's caused me the most trouble in terms of how to describe things. Because with most people, I can just say author, and that was a nice story to put up there. That hey, I had all these novels that were being connected in, and then you were one of two, I think, off the top of my head, who are doing video instead.
Yeah. Well, how did I get started creating? I got to give a little bit of the credit to you, actually, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, we used to do gaming and whatnot, and that was a big influence on me. And I turned into a giant gamer. And a lot of those stories that I created over the years for my friends just kind of stuck with me, and the process just kind of stuck with me. So, be it writing fiction or writing a screenplay, it's all kind of coming from the same well. And for me, so yeah, I mean, I just started doing film about, I guess it's been about 10 years, but it's just something I enjoy doing music, I enjoy writing, and I enjoy collaborating, so it just kind of made sense.
Okay. You want to talk about your day job for a minute?
Sure. I'm a video producer at a medical university in the West Chicago suburbs. So it's kind of cool just because when it comes to doing the filmmaking video thing, I get to sort of play with the equipment and live in that video world for my day job too. So I think it just kind of helps keep me sharp when I'm talking about working on schedules and stuff. Oh, there goes now.
I have no idea what that is.
The power of Google.
Unless, what the heck?
It sounds like an ice cream truck. Are we hungry? Is there ice cream available?
He's going by.
Oh, it's a video call from Christopher Reed, who is hanging over in the side. So, hang on a second while I invite him in, which is going to have to be done slightly differently. Hang on a second, Chris. And you guys can talk amongst yourselves there if you like.
No pressure.
Hi, guys.
I should blue box Jason there so that as you guys talk, well, let's see. I will give you another question here, Jason, and you can fill in while I figure out how to get Chris added to this.
Okay.
So, well, maybe you can explain to people how we know each other.
Well, it goes back a long time. Your wife, my mother were friends, and I was the kid down the street, and I started getting into role-playing when I was very young, and then I discovered that you made these games that I was getting into. So, Yeah, I mean, it's just my family knew your family, and one of my earliest, proudest moments was having just the end of my first name and my last name in the Dark Conspiracy book. It's in the tabloid section. You can read my name, and I got to point that out and feel cool. So, yeah, so it goes back a while. It goes back a long time.
Okay, cool. Christopher, I just sent you an invite, so you should be able to join us if you like. We're nowhere near our 10-person limit yet, so. Okay. So, Jason, other questions? Favorite games?
Favorite games?
Yes.
Let's see. I mean, I still play Dark Conspiracy. Okay, I know it's been a while since that one came out, but it's still on my list. We have fun with it all the time. I like that. I guess I'm going back to the ones I enjoy. Again, I love the Dark Sun setting. I loved Cyberpunk. I guess those are the ones that stick with me.
Okay. Cyberpunk by R. Talsorian?
Yes.
Okay, cool. What are you playing nowadays?
Nowadays, honestly, mostly Dark Conspiracy still. I'm going to be hopefully playtesting this very soon. Got a lot of work to do on it just to, I feel like I need to get my head wrapped around the rule set a little bit more. And then, yeah, I'm just going to hit the ground running with it.
Okay. We're going to do Hangouts play sometime?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
That'd
cool.
be great.
And to keep you in the hot seat for a second, favorite books or movies?
Favorite books or movies? I'm a big John Carpenter guy. So I love They Live, In the Mouth of Madness, Prince of Darkness, The Thing. Like if I could just totally Babe Ruth, call my shot, and like pick my own career, if it looked anything like John Carpenter's, I could not complain at all. So yeah, that's my favorite. Books, I don't know. I like William Gibson. I like. Let's see. There's a lot. I have a lot of favorites.
Okay. And I'll ask you one more question here, and then I'm going to go check to see where we are in the Kickstarter, because it's continued to be climbing, and I'm going to have to break out every once in a while to probably put up an unlocked message. Okay, so last question. Favorite band, favorite song?
Favorite band, favorite song. Probably my two favorite bands. I love Tool and I love Faith No More.
Okay.
So, if I had to pick a favorite song, it would probably have to be something off The Real Thing, that album by Faith No More. That's a tough one to pick, though, because there's a lot of good stuff on there.
War Pigs.
War Pigs is awesome. Yeah, I always said I don't really go to live concerts much anymore, but if Faith No More reunited anywhere within 3 states of me, I would drive there in any direction. That's my standing rule. So hopefully one day that'll happen. They'll need money, something will happen, and I'll get to do that.
Okay. Cool. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to say or like to pitch?
Well, let's see. Most of my time, other than writing for this game right now, goes into a show that I do called The Con Men. It's on YouTube, and pretty much what we do is we go to sci-fi and fan cons, and we just talk to people and we meet them, and we have a lot of fun doing it. So we highlight different vendors and just try to find interesting stories at conventions. We've done 6. I think the next one's going to be at Wizard World in Chicago. So, yeah, that's what's keeping me busy.
Yeah, I've seen 1 or 2 of those, and I really liked the voice, the tone that you guys had as you were interviewing people. It's kind of funny stuff. So, good job.
The funnier the better, I guess. There's a lot of coverage that's not respectful of the people at those cons, and that's kind of what we're looking to change. You know, there's a lot of I don't know, videos where people are sort of saying, "Look at the nerds," you know, and we're trying to sort of show it from a different perspective from the inside. So far so good.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks very much, and of course, you're welcome to continue to hang out here if you like, or take off whenever you need to. I'm going to see if I can unmute Dale here. So, Dale, I brought you to the forefront. Now, how do I unmute you?
I can pop back in and out, right, based on the invite, right?
Yeah, you should be able to. And if nothing else, you can send me a message.
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Oh, I know how I have to do this. Okay, so I had to pop up a different thing. And Dale, you should be unmuted now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And not getting that echo.
That's because I switched to headphones.
Ah, sweet. Or headphone, because you got one ear showing there, I just saw this artist, Van Gogh.
There you go.
I saw him with the Mickey Mouse hat, and one of the ears was missing.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, for those of you who aren't familiar with Dale, he's one of my oldest friends. He used to be an editor for Dragon Magazine, which is how I met him when I was living down in Bloomington Normal, working for Game Designers Workshop, and started doing some reviews for Dragon. Dale, you want to give maybe a history of how you got involved in gaming, how you got the job at TSR?
Sure. Let's see if I can do this relatively briefly. Well, I discovered D&D in an article in a teen magazine, believe it or not, about 1981, or maybe it was even earlier than that, because I started playing in 1981. And the first issue of Dragon Magazine I ever read was issue 50, and grew up playing in high school, playing in college, went to college for communications and creative writing, graduated along with the 3 million other people who had that degree, and for months and months and months couldn't even get an interview. This was, of course, pre-internet, so I'm sending out resumes on expensive stationery and typing up cover letters, and I finally got so fed up that I set aside 1 week and decided I was just going to send resumes to places that I thought might be fun to work. I sent a couple off to a couple of different magazines, Astronomy Magazine, because I worked for the astronomy instructor when I was in college and almost had a job at a planetarium in Oklahoma City, of all places. And I sent a resume to TSR, and I sent a resume to Dragon Magazine. Never expected to hear from any of them. By the way, I was born and raised in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is 30 minutes east of Lake Geneva. And 3 months later, I had graduated from school, and I was living back at home, working at a credit union, until I found a real job and could afford my own place. You're probably about to see one of my cats because he just jumped up on the desk. He's black, so I don't know how well you're going to see him. But anyway, one day the editor of Dragon Magazine, Roger Moore, called and asked if I wanted to come out for an interview. Of course I wanted to come out for an interview. Went out for the interview, didn't get the job. A future co-worker and friend, Ann Brown, got the job as Roger's assistant, and I went back to work very sad, figuring, well, that was my shot, and I'm never going to get another one. Until a few months later, Roger called again. Excuse me, please. Here's the cat.
What's the cat's name?
That was Pipsqueak.
Hey, does anybody have any idea why Dale's camera is zooming in and out?
I know, I haven't been able to figure that out either. I'm trying to stop it, and it's not working.
That is crazy.
Is it like voice activated or something?
That might be it. Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get in there.
It looks like it's Pit and the Pendulum kind of. You got your
It's great cinematography. Leave it alone. That's great.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just it's amusing me.
I kind of like it.
Come on, it's like Second City's TV. It's 3D House of Slave Chicks. Come on.
How about some blueberry pancake?
Exactly. All right, I'm going to do that. Take that
Okay,
off.
so Ann Brown got the job, and you were left out.
And I'm sorry. And 3 months later, I resigned myself to the fact, rather, that I was never going to hear from any of them. That I was never going to hear from these people again. When Roger Moore called a second time and said that Ann Brown was transferring to the game department, did I want to come out and interview for the same job again? Of course, I said yes, and that time I was lucky enough to get it, and worked on staff for Dragon for over 5 years, about 5.5 years altogether. Last couple of years I was running it because Roger had gone over to the game department, and as Lester pointed out, he was one of my game reviewers for a long time, and I have a few stories I could tell about Lester, but I'm not going to do that right now because I've been talking long enough.
Right, and that's much appreciated. So, you want to explain your involvement with the d6xd6 core RPG?
Well, not too long ago, Les got in touch with me if I wanted to get involved in some playtesting on this, and I certainly did. We met at a bar in western Kenosha County, and sort of halfway between where he's at and where I was at, and he told me all about it, and I said, "Wow, yeah, I'd love to be involved in that." I've pitched him ideas for a couple of settings, and unless he tells me otherwise, I will be privileged to edit the book once he's done writing it, and everybody else is done writing it.
And I've just got a comment from someone I need to answer on the Kickstarter. So let's, Dale, you were pitching an idea for a setting chapter. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I've got a couple. One is, I think I've come up with a title for it. It's the Extra National Scientific Protocol. It's a secret department within the United Nations where the best and the brightest scientists from around the world covertly work to combat the threats that no one country can handle. Anything from mad scientists, mutants, giant monsters, aliens, Atlanteans and Lemurians coming up from the sea, kind of a very pulp sort of a thing, but with modern tech, and they're also going to have some psionics in there. Lester added the terrific idea of an ancient race that seeded the universe with life and when they were seeding Earth, they left behind some artifacts that could give some pretty powerful psionic abilities. So that's some of the things that these monsters and mutants and aliens and scientists and so forth are all after. If anybody remembers the old 60s Japanese TV show that was imported in the 70s, Ultraman, where you got the guys who were running around in the horrible, the Japanese characters who were running around in the horrible orange suits and ties with the big goofy looking helmets. They were the Science Patrol or something like that. And that's kind of where this idea came from, just modernized and made, slightly less campy, I hope. But, like I said, one adventure you might have to figure out how to defeat a giant Godzilla-like monster without Ultraman there to help you, and other times it's could be X-Files-ish kind of things. So that's pretty much that one right there. I don't know, is Lester back? Oh, it looks like he might be back.
I'm here. I'm just taking care of some comments.
Some other things. Okay.
Yeah. Don't mean to leave you hanging in the lurch. We're
That's
at.
all right.
While I'm pasting this comment in, we are at $10,890 right now. So I'm hoping we're going to get the next level, which will be Rob King's Baker Street Irregulars. For those of you, before I get to the other people who are here, for those of you who aren't aware of it already, we already have a couple of people outside the Kickstarter who are working on PDF supplements that will be for sale for like 99 cents, I think, on Drive-Thru RPG. And then if we get enough of those, then we'll collect them together, I'm thinking, into a print-bound book as well. But definitely be available on Drive-Thru RPG. Okay, so the thing that Dale's talking about, for example, would be one of these. And Mike, maybe we can turn to you next. Do you want to explain what you were working on for the core RPG?
It's an expansion based on a superhero setting. It's a little gritty, a little witty, a little angry.
Yeah, Emergence, is that the series title?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's how I started it a long time ago, and ran a bunch of short stories with that, and eventually the character of Fire Drake came around, and I've just run with him ever since.
Okay. Do you want to give a little bit of, again, like an elevator pitch? Are you guys all familiar with the term elevator pitch? If you're not, the idea is that you get on an elevator with someone and you've got just a couple of minutes before the door opens that you can try to pitch them an idea. So it's that kind of nutshell little thing.
Yeah, basically, it's a superhero setting. The difference between this and the ones you would normally encounter is mine, first off, no one knows where the abilities come from. That's actually something that's being worked on in the background. The U.S. government has got some... I'm sorry about that. U.S. government has got its own people that run what they call the Department of Meta-Human Affairs. A lot of people consider it an interference bureau, but it's... Yeah, I'm not real sure how to describe it specifically.
Well, that's part of the reason for these elevator pitches. You know, actually, the only reason I have one is because I was doing an online role-playing game with Scott here, and at the end he said, you know, you should have like just a really brief summation on the website to tell people what the heck this is. And I had thought, this is the CoreRPG.com website. I got to thinking about it and thought, yeah, it's like all the information's there, but it's not up front in just a couple of sentences. So thank you, Scott, for that bit of help. And I still haven't figured out exactly how this Q&A thing works. I can see questions over on the side and comments, and definitely appreciate them. Let me answer one question here. I will select this one. I don't see a place to type in, so this is David Dupuy has asked, did the Kickstarter exceed your expectations, or did you think it would be larger in not only dollars but backers? Kickstarter projects, this is my 5th or 6th one, and every one of them is a completely different beast. It has to do with the way the audience changes and the way that history of Kickstarter grows. And, like, for example, I launched this one, and the potato salad Kickstarter came along right at that time. And that changed the way everybody was thinking about Kickstarter. There was suddenly a lot of ire toward that, and frankly, I got a little bit of ire pointed at my Kickstarter because I set a $1 basic goal. What I was trying to say was, I'm going to print this book no matter what. The Kickstarter is going to determine how big it is. So, to answer this question specifically, my absolute dream would have been to hit $20,000, because that would fund every one of these chapters from the get-go. But that was that was pipe dream. You set these things out there for just in case it goes crazy. As I'm looking right now, we are at again, it looks like we're at $10,890, and that is beyond my expectations, I have to say. I'm really thrilled to have reached this point. To give a little bit of history, maybe I'll pitch this in right now. Last year was a card game year for me, and I've been publishing books since 2005 as print on demand and ebooks, Kindle and Barnes and Noble and so on. Had a friend with a print on demand company down in Beloit who was doing some books for us in the first year or two, and then found out about CreateSpace, which is an Amazon company, and that's been what's really satisfied our needs. But I saw that the Drive-Thru RPG guys, onebookshelf.com is their overall site, and they have Drive-Thru RPG and RPG.net and wargamevault.com, I think, and then last year they launched Drive-Thru Cards. And when I saw that and realized it was the same kind of setup as CreateSpace or whatever, this print-on-demand idea, I thought, I got to jump on this while they're just getting started. And the idea was to see if I had enough fans left from the 90s, basically, to actually sell some games. I had some rules written up on my website that were using poker card designs, and so the idea was to see if we could use Kickstarter to fund the illustration of those things, and then if there'd be an audience for them. And that went really well. And I went card games instead of role-playing games because I knew that the amount of text involved in writing card game rules would be much shorter and more focused. And so it's more like poetry. and I'm more of a poet than a novelist. Novel is a big, long stretch of work. Writing a huge role-playing game is a big, long stretch of work. And as Dale knows from our time at TSR, the traditional way of doing that, too, has been, in order to keep the game alive, you have to keep this publishing schedule of 32 or 64-page modules, or the complete Book of Elves, or the complete Barbarians, or whatever. And that's not something that I can do on a part-time basis while keeping a full-time job and doing some work for the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets and so on. So the card games worked very well for that, and then I had a couple of people who were saying, "Oh, we would love to see Zero back in print." And Zero's not a world that I own, but I did love that central mechanic of focus, and so I thought, well, let's try doing a game from scratch. And so I started building the website, writing the rules up there. Got last July, ran the first adventure down in Quincy, Illinois at QuinCon, and then came back, got involved with Dale. We've been hanging out at Coliseum Games in Kenosha on pretty much a weekly basis, trying out lots of different settings, very much flying by the seat of our pants, but it's been a nice way to get rules put together. And last fall, one of the little serendipity moments, I figured I was going to have to write all of these different genre chapters, probably myself, or maybe drag a few friends in. And Doug Niles asked if I would be willing to republish one of his old trilogies as an ebook line, the Watershed trilogy. And I started reading this fantasy trilogy and realizing that it was just brilliant. It's one of the most innovative world concepts I've ever seen in fantasy. So I went to Doug and said, why would I write a fantasy setting from scratch when this is here? Can I just use it? And we'll put together a little chapter, and then people will buy your novels as source books for to proceed beyond that chapter and add to the game. And when he said yes, that just clicked. Why should I write any source books if I can give just an initial chapter and then have people read the novels? Went to Adrian Howell and Matthew Brian Laube. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. I've never actually met him in person. And there were two other authors, Hannah Peach and Andrea K. Host from Australia. Those four authors were people I'd never met before, but I was so blown away by their work that I just had this dream of, and it occurs to me, Mike, I've still got you on screen and I'm doing all the talking, so there, we'll put myself on screen. Sorry about that, viewers. I'm still learning how to do this. It's old dog, new tricks kind of thing, and Google's still working out some of the details too. So I'll take most of the blame though. So anyway, all four of those authors said yes, and that just started the ball rolling. I, of course, had already talked to a bunch of authors that I knew from TSR days and GDW days, and here we are. So to finish answering that question, one last thought is that even the settings that we don't end up funding tonight, I will be pursuing those with authors to do as standalone chapters on Drive-Thru RPG as PDFs. And let's see, Ernie, thanks for the comment. And thanks for... Oh, actually, this is Christopher Reed, who's got to go. Chris, thanks. Hope you're enjoying your vacation, and thanks very much for stopping in and for doing all the playtesting that you've done, and for your encouragement, buddy. You are the best. Okay, so Mike, if we can come back to you for a minute. We got the basic idea of what your setting is about, and you haven't actually started working on the chapter yet, and we haven't role played together yet. So I don't know how familiar you are yet with the rules that are online. Could you maybe speak to that?
I spent a little time reviewing them. Not had a chance to sit down with them. Usually when I go pick up a new game, I will sit down, spend a couple hours. I'll just sit and generate specific characters over and over, specifically ones that I've used in the past over and over, so that I know how the system works with what I'm familiar with. And I'll sit and work them through with the skill resolution and things like that until I'm familiar with the setting, or the rules. And once I do that, then I can adapt what I've got on paper, I can put with the rule system with very little work.
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, with the core system, obviously, if you're going to sit down and spend a couple of hours generating characters, you're going to generate a heck of a lot of character. Because it takes only about 5 minutes. And that's what I've been seeing for a good solid year. Do you have any conceptions yet of what you'll need to do to specifically adapt the game to Emergence?
The only thing I'm going to be dealing with specifically that wouldn't be dealt with anywhere else that you've got would be the creation of super abilities, superpowers, whatever you want to call them. Some of it can be simple, basically, bulked up for armor plate, however you want to put that. Any of the normal things can work through that. Then you get into some of the things like flight, pheromone control, things like that. It would have to be done on a case-by-case basis. Wouldn't be something that I'm sure you'd want 6,000 different things lined out specifically. More along the lines of present a few simple examples and let individual players and GMs do their own expansion on that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, of course, we've done a little bit of supernatural powers using the Ghost of a Chance setting, and so I know that the system can handle that in terms of defining a specific set of skills that are unique to that setting, and it needs to be about 15 or 20 skills maximum to work with that focus rating of 9 maximum. But also a lot of it comes down to how occupations are defined in a particular setting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with superheroic powers in those terms.
Well, it'll at least be a challenge to try and figure out how to integrate what's there and what's not, and figuring it out on my end is going to be the fun part for me.
Okay. Can you talk maybe a little bit about what games that you've been playing lately, or what your favorite games are?
Oh, I cut my teeth back on Blue Book D&D, worked my way through what's now Classic Traveler, and started from there. I went through... At some point, I've played pretty much every superhero RPG that I've found. Dark Conspiracy, sitting right up on the shelf. I can see it from here.
Oh, bless you. How about Super Babes? Have you played Super Babes?
I have.
No.
Have you heard of Super Babes?
No. How did I miss something?
This is one of the benefits of having, and I see Dale laughing. It's one of the benefits of having written reviews for Dragon Magazine. That came in to be reviewed, and it's based on a comic book series, which
The FemForce comics.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. FemForce. I'm embarrassed to admit, in some ways, how good a game it is. It's something that made me really appreciate level-based gaming and see that level-based games. Because I'm a big skills-based game fan. My group, when I got started role-playing, dumped Advanced Dungeons and Dragons fairly early to go to the fantasy trip, which later on basically it was a progenitor to GURPS. So, but Super Babes came in, and it's a setting in which you're playing superheroic females, and sometimes some of the things that happen in the comic book are things like you gain 5 pounds and everybody notices. So, very cliche. Again, I'm kind of embarrassed to talk about it, but it was a very well designed game. Maybe
Yes,
Dan, maybe you can talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't remember it in great detail, but yes, I was also surprised at how well it functioned. Personally, I'm all about superheroes and superhero games. When I started at Dragon, this was a period of time where after Jeff Grubb had designed the Marvel Superheroes game, and he had moved on to do other things, and there really wasn't any Marvel coverage in the magazine at that time. I asked Roger, hey, can I write Marvel articles? And he said, sure. But you're on staff, I can't pay you for them. So at that time, I didn't care. I just wanted to, cover my favorite game, Marvel Superheroes. So I started doing that, and a few months after I was hired, Stephen Shen was hired into the games department. He started a column in Polyhedron about superheroes, and he and I got to be friends, our mutual interests, and being from the same hometown and everything. And eventually we ended up swapping columns. He started writing Marvel files for me at Dragon because he could get paid for them, and then I didn't have to do it anymore. And I took over his Polyhedron column and was able to be compensated for that. But talking about back to Lester's FemForce game, Lester's chosen bailiwick when he was reviewing games for me was small press games. And I invoked your name earlier today, Lester, when I was talking to Jim Lauder, who's also doing the setting for the book, when I was telling him and a couple other friends about the Whispering Vault campaign you were running at one point last. But FemForce, that was a surprisingly great game. It was the comics, were, if I can say this, charmingly sexist, I guess. They weren't mean about it or anything, but all the characters were female, and they were all well endowed, but the comics were good. They told good stories, and it was a remarkably good game. I had a lot of fun playing that game, and as Lester showed me, like, wow, okay, some of these small press games really are quite good.
Okay, cool. Man, there's a lot to keep track of here between the Q&A and seeing group chat messages pop up. So thanks for your patience, everybody who may be watching in the background. And for those of you on screen, Mike, I'm going to come back to you for a second. I asked about games that you've played. I haven't asked how you got started writing.
Oh, I started writing when I was about 5. just random things that I could think about, and I put down on paper, and I just kind of grew from there. All through school, it was the only subject. Honest to God, I suck at math, but I can write. I blew through English like it was nothing. Um, Ever since then, years ago, I ran across a website of superhero fiction. I submitted him a story. He enjoyed it. A lot of people sent messages about it, and that was actually the first story of the emergence. And I just took off from there. I'd also been writing on the side on a survivalist website, a serial fiction about a meteor shower that affects pretty much the entire Earth, and how the people react to that. So just came and went. I hang out every now and then. I grab the thing and start typing.
Okay. And I'm getting messages in the background on the on Facebook. One from Chris Reed. By the way, we are up to 10,908 on the backing, so we're not too far from unlocking the next setting, the Baker Street Irregulars by Rob King. And let's see here. We've got 61 minutes to go. That's pretty cool. Okay, so Mike, last couple of questions. Favorite? Did I ask you favorite games already? I asked what you've been playing lately.
Oh, favorite games. I always loved Shadowrun ever since it first came out. I still got a copy of everything I've got from the first edition is sitting up on the shelf too, right here. The older stuff, Star Frontiers from TSR, was a big favorite when I was a kid. Keep playing it still to this day. I love it.
Do you have a particular favorite type of character in Shadowrun? Or a particular race?
You know, I tend to play somebody who's a lot of times like the former company man, similar to that. The kind of person that just kind of slips through the cracks unnoticed, the gray man.
Okay. And do you listen to music while you write?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what kinds of stuff do you listen to?
Depends on. Sometimes it just depends on the mood I'm in. If I'm just writing in general, I've got a lot of Southern rock, old Molly Hatchet, Leonard Skinner, stuff like that. If I'm doing fights, I generally fall back on really, really old school punk, Clash, the Melvins, the Ramones, things like that that get everything sped up a little bit.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's turn to Scott, who's been sitting here quietly through this entire thing. Scott, you want to introduce yourself and maybe mention why you're here?
Sure. My name's Scott McClanahan. I write a comic book with Alex Williamson. It's called Remnants, and it's been inspired by a lot of the work. You know, we sell it as a kind of Call of Cthulhu meets Tarantino, if you could accept something like that, because it's over the top. You know, it tends to be violent, and it tends to have what we perceive as very witty dialogue. But the point is, and there's a Hellblazer aspect to it, which sometimes I omit. The concept is we have our main character, Nick Dealtree. He's found this book. It's a kind of roadmap to these artifacts, vestiges from some previous civilization. We call them remnants. And the idea is he finds them, he's trying to figure out what they do, how they work, and why they're showing up everywhere. And as he finds more of these things, he kind of gets the vibe that they're leading to a sort of end of days. And so he gathers help wherever he can find it, from friends, enemies, terrorists, prostitutes, anybody who will listen to him. And he gets this ragtag team of individuals to help him kind of curb what he perceives as an end of days. Now, pardon me, it's a little hard to talk while I've got these earphones on. I'm trying to avoid the echo. It's kind of hard talking when you can't hear yourself.
Oh, you're doing great. You sound natural.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. But it's sort of weird. There's like a chicken and the egg situation here, because Remnants is actually inspired by the dark conspiracy games that Alex and I, used to run and play. And now that we've got that, not to give any kind of huge spoiler for the Remnants readers we've got now, we're on issue number 9 now. The thing is penned to go about 55 issues before we're done. But the way we plan on leaving the world, it's a sort of fate versus free will that you're going to see the characters come back to again and again. And the idea is that we're going to leave the world a little bit different than the way that we found it. And the way that we leave it is going to be very similar to when you open up the middle of that first edition DC book and you start finding out that clunky telephones are being imported from Mexico again. So, kind of our little nod to where we picked the stuff up. And where we picked the stuff up from, we would run a game, and a lot of times when you play these sort of role-playing games, it degenerates very quickly to let's pull out the automatics, roll the Yahtzee of dice, and so on, and see where this leads us. But with Alex and I, we always kind of, before X-Files was even a show, we had that X-Files mentality, for the first 3 seasons at least, when they knew what they were doing, of kind of having an overarching story where we wanted to go with it. And we would play off of each other, I would run a game, Alex would run something different. I would know pieces of what he was doing, he would know pieces of what I was doing, but all together, these different pieces, we sat down and put them into the story. And that's what Remnants is. So it's got a very strong magic vibe in it. And that was something that I thought was going to be really cool when we were making a setting for core D6, because I looked at the skills that Lester's got for the modern setting. And we're using most of those, taking away a couple that for Remnants we didn't perceive as relevant. We took away like driving. We just assumed, everybody could drive, but we replaced it with something like stunt driving, okay? So his car chase seemed to come up again and again and again, so we thought those should be there. The other thing we added was a magic system, and that's kind of hard to do at a glance. It's a lot like what I think, Mike is going to run into when he starts putting superpowers into his settings. You got to figure out how can you make a skill for something where folks just can't min-max and end up with these, super powerful characters. What we ended up doing was we made sort of like a lore skill and then a religion skill, okay? Now they'll end up with different names, but the idea is you learn a little bit about a spirituality. We wanted to avoid the term religion, but we went with Yoruban mythology, Ashanti mythology, Egyptian, Sumerian, all kinds of different spiritualism that we consider relevant to the Remnants universe. And the idea is you could pick up a skill to learn all about that kind of magic. And then you can pick up another skill to start to specialize in particular rituals or spells indigenous to that school, okay? And now here's where we kind of use Les's focus number, because the more skills you've got, the less sort of specialties you're going to have in a particular school of spiritualism. Our main character, for example, specializes in Sumerian magic, okay? But, there's all different kinds of things that the Remnants universe explores. I guess where we found, I think, that we were going to have the most fun with it was when we had the specific Yoruban rites, that we started to toy with the concept of why did you have to really have the mythology skill first? What if you didn't? Maybe that just meant that, hey, if you had one of these remnants, or you had a scroll or some sort of focus, not to be confused with Les's focus number, you could cast it anyway. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what the repercussions of that are going to be, and there will be repercussions of that, but it's possible. And now you can make a character who can do very, very dangerous things and not know what he's doing, and I thought that was interesting. And as I look at our book and I look and see what's going to happen later in the setting, we have quite a lot of characters like that, so it seems there should be a way to make them in Core D6.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, that was a really long answer.
Oh, that's great. I am very much looking forward to seeing what you guys do with that chapter, and happy that you've already started work on it. I love the drawing style, by the way. The art that you guys have is great.
That is Jamie Ringay, and he was a hell of a find on DeviantArt. He's been published before through Image. He's the pro, okay? We're the amateur noobs. We have day jobs. We consider Remnants our telescope, okay? Maybe you guys have telescopes. You get it doesn't make you cash. It's something you pour money into because it's fun. That's what our comic is for us. And we do other stuff too. You know, Alex and I, we've written articles for Proto Dimensions. It's the new incarnation of Demon Ground, the Dark Conspiracy fan magazine. You know, and we've written stuff like that, and we still play DC, and we still play Call of Cthulhu, and for some of you, you know, Dale must remember the original D&D stuff and all the references to Therisden. You know, Alex and I see a really huge link between Call of Cthulhu and Therisden. It just seems like such a good fit, and both of those things have kind of influenced our stuff.
Oh yeah, Lost Gods and the Lovecraft mythos and stuff. It was great. Actually, one little anecdote. John Ratliff, who was a longtime editor at TSR and Tolkien scholar, he's the only man I know who has a PhD in fantasy literature. And his most recent work, where he's most noted for, is he did the annotated Hobbit from Tolkien's original handwritten manuscripts, which are up at Marquette University in Milwaukee, where John attended. Look that up on Amazon if you're at all interested in Tolkien. But anyway, back to the story. John edited The Night Below campaign box that Carl Sargent wrote. Now, Carl Sargent had a huge history with Greyhawk and did a lot of Greyhawk stuff. He also ended up doing Night Below, which wasn't specifically Greyhawk, but it had a great, creepy Elder Gods kind of a feel to it. And when John was running that for us, he actually dropped the Lost Temple of Therisden module into Night Below somewhere, and so we're getting down here in these illithid cities and things like that. And oh look, here's this temple to this lost guy. Except really, is he really lost? I don't, you know. So nice. that was brilliant. That was something that I was really happy.
Night Below had Therisden seeds anyway, and he just took that, I guess, and that's really cool. Putting all the cysts, I guess, from the
the cysts, exactly.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to play in that. One thing, where you guys were talking about powers and things like that, you certainly don't need my help in describing your settings. But me being all about superpowers and things like that, if there's anything you do want to talk to me about, that I'd be happy to give you feedback, bounce ideas off you, or you can bounce them off me. Lester, I don't think I'd mentioned this to you. The way I had just recently decided I was going to treat the psionics skills of the player characters in the ESP, Extra-National Scientific Protocol setting, was players could take psionic skills from, there'll be a short list of them, but they can only take them as unfocused skills.
Mm-hmm.
At least in the beginning. So they're not too powerful, and they can still take a retinue of normal skills, so they're still competent at what they do. And, if they don't want to be psionic, they don't have to be. But if they want a psionic ability or more than one, they have to take them as unfocused, at least in the beginning. So I don't know if...
Actually, I think that could work very well. One of the things that I've been noticing in playtests, and as I begin getting the game host chapter together, the game host tends to have more people in the setting than or in an adventure than there are player characters. And hang on one second here. I want to answer Steve Sullivan. So, Steve, I hope you're still here, and I hope you're hearing this. I sent you a link if you want to actually join in on the video part of this. Feel free to click it, and we'd love to have you here. My buddy Sully and Bob Vardaman have done a steampunk setting that they both have a number of novels in. Heart of Steam and Rust, I think. Well, that's at least one of the titles. Empires of Steam and Rust, I think, is the name of the overall series. So I really wish we could unlock that, and if we can't unlock that in the next 48 minutes, it's definitely something I'll be following up with them about as a separate setting. So, but about choosing those things as unfocused skills, one of the things I've noticed is that if I have a villain, you can actually see on the Core RPG site in the game host chapter at the moment that the plan is to have 4 different categories of opponents for the player characters. So there are critters. Those are just the simplest animals with no supernatural abilities. There are minions, and those are those are all the stormtroopers, for example. They're the faceless crowds of people. There are villains, and villains are equivalent to player characters. They actually have drama points that they can spend as well. And then there are monsters, and monsters are things that break the rules for the particular setting you're in. The game host is actually free to borrow psionic powers from another setting in a non-psionic setting, for example. And one of the things that I've noticed in setting up those minions is I tend to give them really high focus numbers, but then make their combat skills unfocused skills. And the end result of that is they have a good chance of succeeding with their combat skills, but not of getting the levels of success that the player characters do, and they tend to act later in the turn sequence. Anyone who's actually used the combat chapter in this will know what I'm talking about here. When you roll the dice, we start. It's 1d6 times 1d6, so there's a range from 1 to 36, and that set of numbers starts jumping pretty rapidly as you get above a 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever. And we start counting down. Whatever you roll is it tells you whether you succeeded at your task. It determines how well you succeeded at your task. And it also is your initiative, quote unquote. It tells when you act in the turn sequence. So whenever you set something as an unfocused skill, if it succeeds, it's going to succeed late in the turn sequence. There's going to be a lot of other stuff that happens first. And lately, Katie was running her blood type setting. She ran at QuinCon and then again recently at the jury room in Elkhorn. And we've used these teamwork skills where literally, as long as there's somebody who has an occupation or a skill and can call the shots for a couple of rounds, we just hand all the dice to that person. And then we all declare what we're going to do, and that person rolls the dice and hands them out. So it means that we could have a couple of people who are not really good with firearms who say, I'm going to spend the turn shooting, knowing that they're going to be handed the lowest numbered dice so that they can actually succeed at shooting. but they're taking that action late in the turn sequence. So I think you'll find that that will work well with those psychic powers, but it means that they're going to be things that happen late.
Right, and again, as you pointed out, they're not going to have the multiple levels of success, at least not in the beginning. And that's where later on some of these artifacts can come in, the helmet of Atlantis or whatever. You can put that on and all of a sudden, wow, you're really good, But when you start off as a PC, you're not, your psi abilities aren't going to be that great.
It sounds very cool. I'm looking forward to it. That's one of the joys of this particular project is seeing this simple core set of rules get adapted in all kinds of different ways, and I'm looking forward to the cross-fertilization of settings. We earlier tonight we unlocked Bill Massa's Gargoyle Knight, and we had already done his Fear the Light, which is all of Dracula's offspring. It's kind of Dracula meets 10 Little Indians. So, yeah, Dracula has been killed, and all of his offspring show up at his chateau in France. It turns out that Van Helsing didn't actually kill him, so he's lived well into the 21st century. They show up at his chateau in France to try to find out who slew their maker, and they start dropping one by one. So it's a great high-action little thing. But I mention it specifically because Bill and I were talking about doing a crossover where the Gargoyle Knight ends up meeting vampires, and having those two separate chapters being able to cross-fertilize works out perfectly. So, Scott, musical, your musical preferences.
I'm all over the map there. Let me say this. I loved a band called The Cure through the 80s. I grew up with them. They were noteworthy in England. They absolutely dominated in where I grew up in Florida, where I was going to high school. I didn't have the white face paint, but I was close. I was almost there. And I did some website admin for a fan group. We traded bootlegs and things like that. And I actually flew to Germany to meet some of these guys and go to concerts with them and stuff like that. So I'm a huge Cure fan. I love Genesis. I love Pink Floyd. I love a lot of harder stuff. It depends what I'm writing. You asked, what we listen to when we write, and it matters. Alex and I were writing something for Proto Dimensions. It was called the Badlands. It was this proto dimension where, I don't know, if you were to give vengeance sentience, then that's sort of what we came up with. I think it was a place where, I don't know, actions tried to correct themselves, perhaps. But we listened to Johnny Cash or Chris Isaac, anything you could even possibly perceive when walking through, Bob Dylan, whatever. When I write the Remnant stuff, it's a bit harder. I like Rammstein. I like anything German. I like Tool. I like Smashing Pumpkins. Dead Mouse. I like dubstep. I love dubstep. Do you like Breaking Bad? Does everybody here watch Breaking Bad? Then you love dubstep.
I have not seen Breaking Bad.
There are three television series that I can recommend to anybody. Well, almost anybody. Anybody in a role playing. Anybody who has a reasonably thick skin. Breaking Bad is one of them. Game of Thrones is another one, and True Detective would be the third. So top 3 premier television, according to Scott, which of course is gospel. You heard it here.
It's funny. My wife and I just watched the first 2 episodes of True Detective tonight.
What are your thoughts?
It's out on DVD right now.
Yeah.
We don't have HBO. We have Showtime and a couple other ones. We don't have HBO, but. We watched episode 1 and 2 tonight, right before this. Before we came on here, right?
Yeah.
So very interesting.
It's a solid piece of work, man. It's rich. I like shows that are rich. They don't even explore all the loose ends in these sorts of series. They just let you. Obviously Game of Thrones is somewhat inspired by the books, but the other two, they give you things to think about, and maybe they explore them and maybe not, but they're just entertaining for their own sake, you know?
Absolutely. I was making that point earlier today. Again, I was talking with a good friend, Jim Lauder, who I met at TSR, and he wrote a bunch of Forgotten Realms novels, and is now writing doing his own thing and publishing tons of anthologies. Perhaps best known for the Books of All Flesh anthologies that go along with the survival horror role-playing game All Flesh Must Be Eaten from Eden Studios. And I was talking with him today. He's got a 1920s pulp character that he writes about. That's going to be the topic of his setting chapter in the core RPG book, and the character is the corpse, who began as a role-playing character, interestingly enough. And I was telling him one of the things that I really liked about the world that the corpse exists in is that Jim, as an author, doesn't feel compelled to explain every little thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, the bad guys are doing this within the story, and the corpse, maybe he's not concerned with how they're doing it. He just wants to stop it. So you don't get the explanation of, well, you know, the pseudoscience.
I love that. I love that. You know, I don't like when a show jumps shark so badly that it's not even conceivable how something could happen. But I like when you can just mull it over, you know, and just leave things to the imagination. You're gonna love True Detective. You're gonna love it.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we were talking about Lovecraft and stuff before, and of course there's the King in Yellow connection, which of course I'm only 2 episodes in. I haven't explored it very much, but that's just one of the aspects that turned me on toward True Detectives. Like, oh, when these DVDs come out, we have to get that. And my wife loves that sort of thing too. She devoured Breaking Bad. She's devouring The Walking Dead. We don't have HBO, so we don't watch Game of Thrones. Otherwise, I'm sure we would. But yeah, I agree completely that depth is key.
Unfortunately, Breaking Bad came along just as I was in the depths of this project, and so most of my spare time has gone to reading new books and trying to search out new authors, and you know, I just banging the gong for this. What little free time I've managed to scrape away from it went to finishing off a 3rd level Pimsleur Japanese course.
So grace us with some Japanese, Lester. Come on.
Oh man, you would ask me that. You know, what can I say? And German comes to mind immediately whenever I try to say anything. So go ahead and talk, and I will come up with something that isn't German.
Now I've got to give you some German. Wo bist deine Badezimmer, bitte?
Deine Badezimmer?
Where's your bathroom? I'm sorry, I had to throw it in.
One time in Germany, I went and asked, because they tend to say, from what I understand, wo sind die Toiletten?
Yeah, you're right.
And the bartender said to me, literally, it's down the hall to the right.
I tried to speak German as well to a few. You know, I learned enough to get by. I learned enough to order, ask where things were, but my accent is obviously terrible. And I talked to him, and to hear it back in an English accent, try again in English, chap. Could you try that in English? And that felt so humiliating. So I said, thank you for knowing it. Thank you for talking to me. And then he told me where I could buy whatever it was I needed.
Yes, thank you for speaking my language better than I do. Yes.
Yeah.
It's important to try. I got this advice from who was it who wrote the Amber Diceless role-playing game and has since passed on? Right. Wujik, who had found out that I was going to be going to France, Dragon Dice took me some wonderful places. I'm a corn-fed Illinois factory worker guy who has ended up landing in publishing through role-playing to start off with. And Dragon Dice got me to Germany a couple of times, and one of the times Ken Whitman had me set up for a convention 2 weeks after the convention that TSR was sending me to. So I just took my vacation time, met an old college buddy over there in Frankfurt at the end of one of the first convention, and we took a train to Rome, stayed in Rome for 3 days, then took a train across the south of France to Barcelona because I've got a Spanish minor and I wanted to see if I could survive in Spain on just Spanish. And we got stranded for a night in Nîmes on the south coast of France because of a train strike. Oh, it was terrible being stranded in the south of France in an unexpected little town.
Almost 11.
And yeah, I know, hon. This thing's going to run till 12 or 12:30.
No.
Oh, almost 11,000. Yes, I've been watching in the background, watching for the 11,250, which will unlock the next goal. So thanks, dear. I thought she was nagging me about going to bed. So anyway, went to Barcelona and then took a train from Barcelona to Paris for 3 days and then finally back to Frankfurt. And Wujik told me, you're going to hear that the Parisians are very snobby, that French in general are very snobbish, but the Parisians in particular are make New Yorkers look welcoming. And he said the trick is always start every sentence with s'il vous plaît. S'il vous plaît, je parle seulement un peu de français. And then you can switch to English, and they know that you at least tried. And I have to say that worked really well. There was only one guy in when we first arrived in France. We arrived at the Gare de la Sur, this train station that everything from Spain comes to this train station, and it is the worst shithole train station. I was astonished to see what I thought were snowdrifts, and I was trying to figure out why are there snowdrifts inside the train station in April. I would think they would all melt away, and then realized as I got up closer, they were not snowdrifts. They were piles of pigeon feathers that had blown in from outside and just never got cleaned up.
I was going to guess asbestos. Yours is better.
Oh man, it was horrible. And my college buddy he's got a little bit of a sensitive stomach and was having some trouble from all of the travel, and he also doesn't speak anything other than English and Latin. We would have these arguments where he would say the only good language is a dead language. And I would try to tell him that French, just because I knew it irritated him, that French was the language of culture. And I remember him saying, "How can you say that about any language that you let dribble out of your nose?" So anyway, this poor waiter at this crappy little restaurant at the worst train station in the world, he's the only one who gave us any kind of look down his nose at us. Everybody else was just friendly as could be.
I found the same thing in Germany. I think you nailed it, just trying to speak their language, because what people don't get, what Americans don't get in particular, is they go over there and they just figure they can just, oh, I want this, and they'll figure it out, and what they don't understand is most, or at least half of the people in Berlin, they grew up learning Russian as a second language, not English, so it's a bit hard for them to understand what you're talking about. So it's a matter of them going to find the one person who speaks English to maybe understand what this person wants, you know? But,
As Americans think if we just speak slowly enough and loudly enough, anyone will understand.
Hey, I'm going to take a
Well,
second to answer another question in the sidebar. Kairam Hamdan, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, asked, will the books, soft and hardcover, be printed and bound by one bookshelf? And the answer to that is it will be both available through the paper bounds will be available through CreateSpace and Amazon, as well as one bookshelf. The hardbounds will all be through one bookshelf. They had the best price, and I've had the best recommendation about them. The hardbounds, I have to say, we've never done before, and so that was, one new thing that we were doing for this particular Kickstarter, and it will be interesting to see exactly how these work out in terms of pricing and such for us. But I've been printing card games with one bookshelf, and I know their customer service is just awesome, and the way they treat their publishers is just awesome. So there's a shout out to them. Thanks for that question. And let's see. Someone has drama points. Thought that was only a Buffy RPG thing. Yeah, I'm not sure how to respond to that. I didn't realize that was in Buffy. And of course, I have to say the Buffy series is one of my favorite things ever. I have 4 daughters, and many of them grew up with us watching Buffy because of the strong female characters. So anyway, thanks for that question, Shay. I hope that halfway answers it. Let's see. She also asked, will all the chapters that are not unlocked be up for purchase later, or just a handful? I'm hoping that they will all be available later, but I have to work out the individual contracts with each author for that. And let's see, is there anything else here that needs to be answered right this minute? Nope. Lots of comments from Christopher Reed. I didn't do it. And Chris is such a funny guy. Great buddy, and he's been probably, I would say, Dale's an old friend, and so Dale, I appreciate all of the support you've given. Chris is somebody that I met specifically through playing Core RPG, and he's been, I would say, our biggest evangelist for this. So, and he was the first guy to GM it other than myself, and has been doing the audio recordings and posting those online. So that's been cool.
Yes, Chris is an outstanding human being.
Yep, he really is, and a very funny and very weird one as well. So, Dale, why don't you talk about musical preferences for a bit while I go take a look at where we are in terms of the stretch goals?
Okay. Well, I am all over the board. Although most of the time my genre of choice is heavy metal. Steve Winter at TSR once referred to me as a heavy metal crankhead, which I thought was a narrow definition, but not necessarily incorrect.
He didn't mean that you were doing crank, did he?
No, I don't think so. No, I was in his office and we were talking about music, and of course we were giving each other crap, and yeah, we were laughing and he called me a heavy metal crankhead. But in my collection I also have everything from classical to jazz to blues, to 70s power pop, some punk. Let's see. About the only thing musically I don't really like, for some reason, reggae just actively antagonizes me. I don't know if it's the beat structure or what it is, but a buddy of mine, actually Stephen Shen, who worked at TSR, he went to school in Madison, and once in a while some of us would go to Madison and just hang out. And one night he took me into a reggae bar, and 20 or 30 minutes, and I said, "I'm sorry, Stephen, I just have to get out." So I don't know why that actively antagonizes me, but if you ever want to torture me, play reggae. When I'm working, especially when I'm writing, I focus so strongly on the vocals in most of the music that I listen to. When I'm actually trying to write, I have to listen to instrumental stuff because the vocals will just distract me too much. So a lot of times it's classical, but if I'm doing fight scenes or things like that, it's kind of heavy metal instrumental guitar or Joe Satriani, things like that. That's pretty much it for music.
You also don't like Billy Corgan's voice, which distresses me.
Yeah, I liked you so much. This is very difficult to hear. I don't know. Maybe the later CDs.
I'll give you this speech that I gave to Lester when I explained this. We were talking about music years ago, and I said I tend to focus very, very strongly on the vocals, probably because the whole writing, editing thing. But I don't care if you sing, if you scream, if you shout, if you whisper, if you mumble. Just don't effing whine. And a lot of Billy Corgan's vocals are whined.
So I can get you some of my Cure CDs with those Pumpkin CDs if you like. Maybe some Smiths, Suzanne Vega.
Yeah, no, see, not so much in the Cure for me. I know why it was popular. I can understand it's good music, but it's just, no, it's just not for me. Stop whining, Robert.
Yeah, Billy Corgan is one of my two absolute favorites. Him and Trent Reznor. I
Sure.
want to have their babies.
9 Inch Nails. I have some of that in my collection. Oh, Lester, I don't know if I ever mentioned this. This is just a 5 minutes of fame kind of a thing. A buddy of mine who works down in Illinois he is friends with the original bassist from Smashing Pumpkins. He's not in the band anymore because they've broken up and gotten back together so many times. But he's buddies with the original bassist for Pumpkins, which I thought was pretty cool.
Darcy Retsky.
I honestly don't remember the name, but
okay. Well,
that's a Chicago area band, as I recall.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so I am looking. We are at 10,953. I hope you guys don't mind me calling that out every once in a while. We have, it looks like 20 minutes to go on this Kickstarter, and that is awesome stuff. What?
Did you want me to talk about games or anything? Last time, are you still doing other
sure.
stuff back there? All right. Well, like everyone else, I will have to kiss up and say Dark Conspiracy. No, actually, that is one of my favorite games.
It's like, I'm sorry for anybody who's watching this video now or later. I seriously did not just try to get a bunch of Dark Conspiracy fans together, but maybe that's my only friends.
He mailed us this if we would show up on his webcam, just so everybody knows, okay?
He didn't mail me that.
Everybody on here got one, so.
I didn't.
Everybody who
I got
Yeah,
Never mind. Disregard.
Yeah, last time you and I need to have a talk, I guess. No, obviously, D&D was a big influence. That was the first one that started me. Marvel superheroes, I talked about that. Call of Cthulhu, The Whispering Vault. That's a Mike Nystel game that Lester introduced us to, again, through his reviews at Dragon Magazine. And, let's see, rounding out Gamma World. It's just so goofy and fun and weird that the first edition of Gamma World and the fourth edition of Gamma World, both by TSR at different eras, I believe within that framework, those I have every Gamma World product that was ever published. So.
I'll be back in just a second, guys. I'm answering a comment on the website.
Okay. Well, then I will ask Scott or Mike. Obviously, Scott, you do comics. Mike, and you write superheroes. What are the comics influences that you guys have had?
Oh, that goes back a long time too. Start off with anything from Batman, Superman, all of the big ones, of course. Through the years, I get into more of the started into Grendel, Hellblazer, a little more off the beaten path stuff. When Marvel did their new universe, I ate that up. And now if I find anything I'm going to get, it's probably going to have Deadpool in it.
How about you, Scott?
I grew up with Marvel. Okay, I didn't read very much DC at all as a kid. I started with I think the first thing I really got into was Spider-Man and Secret Wars. When Secret Wars came out, I was just mesmerized with the whole universe. And then Frank Miller started drawing for Daredevil, and that was it. I mean, so I started collecting until Vertigo started to make its brand, in which I stopped reading about people with capes and special powers, and I started reading Sandman, and I started reading Hellblazer, and then when I read Preacher, I knew, I mean, I was hooked. So that's the stuff that I read. And Alex, who writes with me, he read some of that stuff, you know, he read what I frankly clubbed him over the head with and wouldn't shut up about. I made him read Preacher, I made him read The Doll's House and Season of the Mists of Sandman, but he's got his stuff. He read. You mentioned Grendel. He read a lot of that. He liked reading. Who's the Marvel vampire guy?
Morbius.
Yeah, there you go. He had a big brick of those things that he loved, and everything that went with it. Ghost Rider and Spirits of Vengeance, I think, was being written then. So yeah, we loved that stuff. But gaming, you know, Lester made a comment before about how he didn't have time to really read much because he was, you know, banging the gong for this project and checking out, you know, some other stuff. And when we were writing our things, I started reading Neil Gaiman, and I read it as literature, you know, and like every reference he made, I don't even know what that means. I have to go Wikipedia. Then I got into Lord Dunsany and H.P. Lovecraft and all these things, and it's just like you don't know when to stop. There's all this just inspiration, and it's just, you know, it's magical. I mean, it's awesome. It really is. And I found a lot of things I never would have found if I didn't get into comics and RPGs.
Oh yeah, I know. Besides being lucky enough to have worked as have my career for 12 years full time, working at TSR and later Wizards of the Coast, that's, insanely lucky. But all the people that I got to meet in that era, and all the things that they exposed me to, oh well, you like X, well then you got to read Y and Z and A and B, and so I've had my mind expanded in so many ways, comic books and literature and movies and music, because I've been fortunate enough to make a lot of friends with similar, although not identical interests, and that was one of the reasons that Lester and I are such good friends. We, when we, he was working for me for a while at Dragon, then he came to TSR, and we got to be very good friends, spending a lot of time together, working in the same building during the day, and socializing in the evenings, playing games, going to movies, oh, there's a new Aliens movie out, or whatever it happened to be. Oh, have you read this book, or are you reading this comic book series? Things like that. I'm proud to say Lester's one of my best friends, and when we were spending so much time together, I don't know if we can do it now, but for a while there, we were literally finishing each other's sentences. One of us would stop looking for that particular word, and the other one would have the word and give it to the first person.
Yeah, it's usually me stopping because, as my kids say, they accuse me of having grown up watching too much William Shatner on Star Trek. That's my speech patterns. So I'm sure Dale was finishing lessons usually.
At least some of the time. Yeah, at least some of the time. But
I sorry, didn't mean to step on your lines there. You mentioned Whispering Vault a couple of times, and one of the joys of doing reviews for Dragon Magazine, one of the weird things about that is that back then you could make the distinction of major game companies and small press. Nowadays, that distinction doesn't really exist anymore, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's Wizards of the Coast, which is owned by a major game company, so maybe they're large press. Though even in their case, I think their publishing is kind of the ghetto of Hasbro. I've heard before that Hasbro, and this was a decade ago or so, that if Hasbro brought out a game and it sold less than $250,000 worth in a year, it was considered an absolute failure and just dropped. Whereas, most role-playing game companies that were even big at the time, $250,000 a year on a game would be phenomenal. But so doing those reviews, it gave us a lot of experience playing and learning from a number of different systems. I remember, I'll come back to Whispering Vault in a moment because I think that's just genius. But I remember being on an airplane with who was it? Monty Cook. We were flying out to Los Angeles for a convention, and I was using the time on the plane to read through a little small press vampire role-playing game that had come in, and they had forgotten to put a combat system in, so they had a loose leaf sheet they just dropped in the middle of this thing, and I was reading through the combat rules, and I said, all of a sudden I looked at Monty and said, does this say what I think it says? And he read it, and he said, yeah, absolutely it does. And I'm not going to give away that secret yet. So I came back, and I convinced pretty much everybody in the creative services department to create a character for this role-playing game. I just made a mimeographed sheet of, or a photocopied sheet of the character creation rules, and I didn't let them see the combat rules, and set up a scenario where there was a bar, and it was built like in this duplex kind of building. The bottom floor of the building was a blood bank owned by the vampires, and the upper floor was a bar. And then about half of the characters were down in the blood bank, and about half of them were up in the bar when a rival gang of vampires attacked the blood bank to try to rob it. And we did the first round of combat, and one of the guys who was downstairs in the blood bank helping defend it got hit by one of the invaders and took a certain amount of damage. And then I looked at everybody else and said, your character takes the same amount of damage. Even the guys upstairs in the bar. This was the way this combat system worked. If one person got hit on your side, everybody got hit on your side.
Was this maybe a post-apocalyptic game? Were they maybe using nuclear weapons? Could that explain it?
I was going to say dodgeball.
I think it was a case of they read the Tunnels and Trolls rules and didn't actually play them. Because in Tunnels and Trolls, you pool all of your dice, and at least in one of the editions, you pool all of your dice, the bad guys pool all of their dice, and you figure out how much damage was done overall, and then you divide the damage up across your side. And the only things that specifically hit individual targets are ranged weapons. And actually, that's a pretty admirable combat system for representing what overall melee looks like, the chaos of it. But when it's not divide the damage up on your side, it's everybody gets hit for the same amount, and even if they're in two different locations. Anyway, that first point of damage came in, and everybody just looked at me and howled and walked out of the room. That was the end of that play test. But Whispering Vault, if you guys can find a copy of it someplace, man, what a genius horror setting that is. And I guess I won't say anything else about it. Probably I need to just write up a little blog entry about that. It looks like we're down to about 7 minutes left. Let me take a quick look at where we are. And it looks like we're still just under $11,000. So I don't know that we're going to hit the Baker Street Irregulars goal in the next 6 minutes, in the next 5 minutes. But that is a setting that I definitely plan on having come out later on. And we've already done a cover for it. If you guys haven't checked out the website, Kate did a cover for that just this last week that I'm very happy with. Somebody says, oh, I guess this is our buddy Steve Sullivan. I may also be time lagged 10 minutes, but I'm still hoping for more goals. I want that Sherlock one and the Trouble in China. Actually, that's Big Trouble in Little Canton. It's set in Canton, Ohio, which and it is awesome. It is awesome. All right. Man, I'm so enthused at how many people have shown up to watch this, and that you guys have stuck around for 2 hours. This is very cool. I very much appreciate it. As you can see, am sitting in my recliner. What you can't see is that my Chihuahua is curled up next to my side, laying on his back with his belly up in the air, sound asleep. You can see that I'm drinking out of my MonsterCon mug. This was one of the card games that came out last year, and I had planned on showing earlier in the session. This is my badge bag from GaryCon. I'm going to have to get some of these things made up for myself. These things are so cool. You can see there's a zippered pocket back here. There's another pocket I keep business cards in. There's the front pocket, which I've taken this to every convention I've gone to since then, and I just stick my name tag in there. I brought it because inside is my character. This is one of the business card character sheets. Back it up a little bit. And there you can see my character from the blood type setting, Garrett Cully. It is so cool to be able to carry a character sheet around with you wherever you go for in case a game breaks out. And then in this zippered pocket, I'm carrying the promo dice that playtesters have been getting with the little smiley, fanged smiley face for the ones digit. When I had these things made, I had the option of putting that on the ones digit or on the 6. And I thought, well, it's only one figure. I'll put it on the ones digit. And since then, I've had people complain that whenever they roll a 1, which is usually kind of sucky in the game, they feel like the thing is grinning at them in mockery.
Hey, Lester, if you'll check your totals, went over 11-4.
Holy cats, that is awesome. 2 minutes to go, and that means thanks, man. Thanks for mentioning that. That means that we have unlocked the Baker Street Irregulars, and I hope I have time to stick a quick edit in there to show that that's unlocked. I'm going there right now. If you guys have something you can talk about for a minute while I do this, you can denigrate my hero Billy Corgan more if you like.
Listen, what are the things that Lester likes that we can we tear down?
Cool. Okay. That is now posted. Wow, that is awesome. Rob's going to be really happy to hear that on Monday when I get in too. 46 seconds. We're at 11,441, which is, yeah, I couldn't have imagined doing this well, especially well into the first week when we were sitting at about 4,000 or 4,500, something like that. It was, and I'm watching the countdown, 17, 16, 15.
It feels like an eBay bid. I feel like somebody's going to snipe you.
Yeah, exactly.
That would, yeah, well, that would be too cool. 490 backers. I had to take off the pledge that up, and it did jump just a little bit right there at the end. $11,456. So somebody boosted their backing. Wow! Thanks everybody who has backed that. Where was I? I've lost my train of thought. About eBay and getting sniped at the end. That was cruel.
You're welcome.
Let's see if there's anything else that Ernie Givens says he's still here multitasking. Hasn't seen the invite yet. Google's not telling me where to look. Oh, sorry. That's Steve Sullivan who's saying that. Sorry, Sully. to have missed you, but and anything else here? Christopher Reed wants to know why, Dale, you haven't told him about the setting you were working on sooner. So you will be answering to him when he's back. He won't be back tomorrow, from what I understand.
Oh, that reminds you, what time tomorrow, Les?
Yeah, we normally meet at 1 o'clock, but Carly, my youngest daughter, is staying with us for a couple of months during the break from film school in Nebraska. She's in the Johnny Carson School of Theater and Arts at University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and she's here visiting with her Bichon Frise. Is that what it is? It's the teddy bear style dogs. It's got a personality of Tigger, and it's a crazy dog, but really, really loving and a really good companion for her. Anyway, she is working until 1:15 or 1:30, and it takes us an hour to drive. So sometime after 2 o'clock, between 2 o'clock and 2:30, I think, is when we'll be there.
Okay.
And I'm not planning on doing role-playing tomorrow, though maybe I'll get a wild hair, but I thought I'd bring out some board games.
Okay, yeah, I just picked up a game from Coliseum called Indigo. It's a couple years old, but it's looked really interesting. So
we have that. We haven't tried it yet. What are your favorite board games? I hear you guys talking about them. You know, we've got a group. We do RPGs sometimes. We do board games sometimes. What are your favorites that you guys play a lot of? Mine's Stone Age. That's probably one of my favorite games.
I've not played Stone Age.
It's quick. It's a quick game. You can kind of hit the ground running with it. Be done in about 90 minutes. It's probability based, resource gathering, and it's fun though. It's a really fun game. You can play with relatively young kids too, but it's good for adults.
Okay. What I've been playing over the past year, and for what it's worth, this old college buddy of mine that I mentioned earlier, he lives in Indianapolis, and once or sometimes twice a year, we will rent a suite about halfway between us, and he brings a buddy of his from Indianapolis, and the three of us, and sometimes Rob King will come down and maybe bring one of his sons on just the Saturday, but the three of us spend a long weekend, at least 3 days, just playing board games, drinking, and smoking cigars.
Nice.
It's a great time. A really, really relaxing. Get away from everything. You know, this is one of the nice things about road trips is you get out of the house and you can't do anything about any of the problems that are at home. So it's a good excuse to just forget about them. And they introduced me to Seven Wonders.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I picked up a copy, and I was surprised at how well it went over with my wife and our second daughter, who lives with us. We've played that several times. That game's definitely got some legs. I haven't introduced them to Seasons, which is kind of a similar game. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous game.
Have you tried Evo?
No.
Evo Evolution? I'm sorry.
Evolution. Yeah. Actually, I ran demos of that down at QuinCon this last weekend because I had played one of their early prototype copies and was so enthused about it. I begged them, please. Yeah, that's another one that the rules aren't very long. It's not hard to pick up, and you can just run with it. And it's so fluid. Things are so different from game to game, and depending on who you're playing with and how stingy they are with the food points in the middle at each round. One other thing that we've played quite a bit of that I just absolutely love is something called Chaosal. It's basically if you crossed the old TSR dungeon board game with Sorry or Parcheesi, and then added in multi-level castle walls, plastic castle walls. This thing actually has, so it's got a big board with a Parcheesi-style path around it, and you're trying to get your figures all the way around the board, and then to attack the central castle, break down 100 points, and get inside in order to win. So that's very much like Parcheesi, except instead of just trying to roll the right number on your dice to get in, you're having to break through the castle wall. But the pieces, instead of just being regular pawns, every one of them is a different character with a different character sheet and with skills that can be changed as they gain experience through the game. And they've got everything from a skeleton archer that my wife really likes to play because for some reason she likes to sit back and plunk at you from a distance, to there's a minotaur, there's a unicorn, a dragon slayer, just a ton of different pieces in there. And the different levels of the castle wall, you literally walk up steps to get to the next level. And the reason you want to do that is because the higher you go, the shorter a path is around the board. So the faster you move, in effect, on the same dice rolls. The problem with that is the higher you go, the more often you run into someone else and have to do battle with them. And it's a hoot. It's, again, an easy game to pick up, a ton of toy value, and in a world that's full of $60 to $120 games, this thing's like $35 or $40. I can't believe they sell it for so cheap.
Yeah, you brought that to Coliseum a few weeks ago, didn't you, Les? Because that sounds really familiar.
Yep. Yep, I did. And I may bring it back tomorrow. Though we picked up a couple of things at QuinCon that we may bring down. I don't know. But Indigo, yeah, definitely will want to give that a try. Like
okay,
being exposed to new things.
I'll bring that along.
Let me mention one other thing that I've been playing the heck out of, and anybody who's been following my Facebook posts or my blog will have seen multiple posts about this. I'm playing it on Android. I'm actually going to mention two things on Android. One of them, the one I was going to mention is Elder Signs Omens. Have you guys heard of this?
Yeah.
The board game itself is a heck of a lot of fun, but playing it on the Android means that you can carry it, or there's an iOS version. You can carry it with you wherever you go. And I have played this so much that after finally fairly regularly beating all of the great old ones that are in the game, with a full party of 4 characters, I found out that you can actually play the game with a single character. You can play with fewer than 4. And so I started just picking and choosing individual characters and saying, well, wonder how Jenny Barnes would do all on her own. And it is a blast. I'm currently trying with one character. I've managed to defeat everybody except Ithaqua, and just keep getting my butt handed to me by Ithaqua. And then I'll mention as well a free one called Space Team. If you guys have not tried Space Team, there's just nothing, there's nothing like Space Team. You can play it on phones or whatever, and it gives you these weird little it gives you a weird little alien creature that you have to beam up onto a ship, and you're all connected by Bluetooth, and you've got a control panel in front of you that it's got maybe toggle switches, it may have a dial, or it may have a slider. It'll have 3 or 4 different things on there, and it's stuff like evacuate the flux capacitor, run the dishwasher, apply for insurance. I mean, just insane commands. And you'll get these commands popping up at the top of your screen, and they're not all for you. Some of them are for things that are on other people's panels. And there's this big fireball that's approaching your ship from behind. So you've all got to work together, and you're just screaming out, you know, quick, reset rotostator to 2. Or sometimes there's not even a word. There's just there's just an icon of like something with an umbrella, or I don't know what. And so you're screaming out to people, whatever this umbrella thing is needs to be flipped, and the panel starts falling apart, and sparks start flying out, and green ooze is hanging off. You're trying to flip a switch while part of the panel is swinging back and forth from one rivet. It's just insane. And
have you guys? Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's free.
Have you guys ever played a game called Resistance? It's a card game for 10 players. It has a vibe of Are You a Werewolf or something. You played it. What do you think? I think it's a fantastic game. We played at barbecues sometimes. We have gamers over for an annual barbecue over here, and we'll play that. And people walk away enemies from that game, but it's a good game. It is a very good game.
Yeah, it's a great game, a great social dynamic. They played that on an episode of Will Wheaton's Tabletop.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you say 10 players. You mean up to 10 players? Okay.
Up
you
to
need
10.
At least 5.
You need, yeah, it gets better the more people you have.
Okay.
I think really maybe 8 or 9 is optimal, because I think you have like 4 spies when it's 10 or something like that. That's a bit hard. But it's a good game.
And there's also they have another version of it. It's just the Resistance Avalon, where you're all members of King Arthur's court, excuse me, and one of you, and there's traitors, and your Modred's walking around. One of you is Modred, and one of you is Merlin, and he can give clues and things like that. Yeah, they're both great games.
Cool.
Hey, here's a shout out to Stanix, our buddy Stan. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Stan.
And for the comment. And our buddy Steve Sullivan has a question for the panel. There have been a lot of really super, pun intended, movies recently based on comics, but what comic series or storyline would you say are just best experienced as comics? I can't really answer that, so I'm going to turn to comics experts.
I'm going to say Sandman. I know they keep writing scripts for it. I know they're going to make an HBO series out of it. I really hope they do justice to it. I'm not sure I see it happening. I would like to keep that one. I guess it's just sacred to me, it's my favorite one, so I don't think I could ever see that, and certainly not 2 movies. It would have to be a series if they did it. But
how about you, Dad?
Well, I agree completely with that. It would be very difficult to do that as a movie. Very Game of Thrones style series would probably be the best way to treat that. Otherwise, I think like for a specific storyline, I just think they probably wouldn't do it quite right tonally. The Born Again storyline from Daredevil that Frank Miller did.
Yeah.
They just turned that into a stupid action movie, and
Yeah.
and that's missing so much of the point.
How about you, Mike? You got a dog in this race?
I'll run with the Sandman comment. It's so deeply involved, and there's so many levels of it that to try to put it on a theatrical scale, you're missing so many pieces. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and by the time you tried to put it on there, you reached in and took out a handful of pieces and left everything behind.
It was I think at best they might do something like the film adaptation of From Hell. That was a huge work where there was information in every panel of that comic. Yeah, and they turned it into a Johnny Depp movie, but it wasn't a bad movie, but yeah, it's not From Hell. Yeah, it's the story of Jack the Ripper. That I believe this was Alan Moore who did that. Yeah, but some of the things one of the things that I am looking forward to that Hollywood totally botched, and it looks like they're going to coming around do it this time. Maybe they'll get it right. The NBC series of Constantine.
Yes, that is going to be fantastic. I saw the trailers already. It looks beautiful.
Yes, he's British. First of all, he's not Keanu Reeves, so that's good. They're going to have him running around with giant cross guns. Thank God. There's going to be no Shia LaBeouf. That's good. And did you see, Scott? If you in the trailer, there's just one shot, maybe a second and a half long. It looks like he's the Dr. Fate's helmet.
Oh, wow. No.
If you know who Dr. Fate is.
Yeah, I remember hearing a comment, but I don't think I saw it in the actual preview. That's good. That they're going to probably try to tie it in with some of the Books of Magic stuff, too, maybe. That'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been my whole family and we've been enjoying Arrow on the CW, and of course now there's going to be The Flash, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. really got going. It started slow last year, but really got going, and by the end of the season, tied into Captain America: Winter Soldier, that film, and so yeah, it's like, growing up a comic book geek and watching all those horrible superhero movies in the '70s when they just didn't have the effects.
Yeah,
they just couldn't do it.
Well, they had great effects. Spider-Man would climb walls, and he would be like 3 feet away from the building. How awesome was that?
Okay, but the question was specifically what things are best experienced as comics that you think that movies would not be able to handle.
Right. Well, yeah, we mentioned that, but then I took it in a different direction, so that's my fault. Sandman, I mentioned Daredevil Born Again. I'm sure we could find some other ones. Does anybody else have?
I think you covered it with From Hell. That was a good one, but it brings up a point. Like, I saw the movie Stardust, okay, which I can't say it was a terrible movie, but I'm not sure what it was. It wasn't Neil Gaiman's and Charles Vest's Stardust. It was a different story altogether, Not bad, just different. And I think sometimes you're going to see a lot of that. If you haven't read the source material, you can still enjoy the movie, But yeah, my flagship answer is Sandman for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to take a minute to let me break in just to respond to John Watson, who wrote, "Don't worry, I just increased my pledge to unlock the Sherlock one." So he did that just before we closed. Thanks, John. Thanks very much. You're now my best buddy. That sounded much more insincere than it was intended. No, it's serious.
Yeah, you're my best buddy.
It's very much appreciated, and again, Rob King is going to be thrilled when anyone who doesn't know, Rob did a novel that was a crossover of Sherlock Holmes and Carnacki the Ghost Hunter not long ago, and that's
Ghost Finder.
The Ghost Finder, and that's why I asked him to do that setting, is because I knew he had set the Carnacki stuff aside. He had done all of the research on Sherlock Holmes. One thing, he and I were out for lunch when he was working on that novel, and I tried to convince him, because it starts off with Reichenbach Falls.
Yeah, I believe it's called In the Shadow of Reichenbach Falls, right?
Yeah, and Carnacki pulls Holmes out of the water, and Holmes has lost his memory. And what I thought would be a brilliant twist, and Rob liked it but couldn't run it. He couldn't get it past his editor at the time. I thought it would be super, super cool if actually Holmes died, and that who he pulled out of the water was Moriarty. And Moriarty had lost his memory, and through the trauma came to realize just what a terrible person he had been, and what he had stolen from the world in Sherlock Holmes. And so Moriarty would take on the personality of Sherlock Holmes and carry on his legacy from that point forward. I thought that would be a really, really cool twist. But then I always want to put a twist on something, I guess.
Yeah, Carnacki could have just told them, you're an amnesiac? Oh, well, you're Sherlock Holmes.
I like that. That's actually really nice. Everybody would be waiting for him to just eventually go, maybe I am Moriarty, though,
Yeah, well, those two characters, I mean, they're two sides of the same coin. So, anyway, I thought that would be fun. I'm going to mention one other thing while we're talking about superheroes, while we're talking about comic books. Next month, within actually a few days, are you guys all familiar with the SFR Inc. guys?
Mm-hmm.
No. I hear a resounding silence. I know Dale is. Have you guys ever heard of Dragon Dice?
Yes.
Okay.
Some obscure person, I think, invented those.
Yeah.
Some hack.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the coolest things... Okay, so you guys have mentioned Dark Conspiracy, and I would have to say two of the best things about my career as a game designer, two of the biggest compliments, have been the fact that Dark Conspiracy refuses to die. I mean, there's Three Hombres Games right now has a new edition of it out. There's always someone who keeps bringing it out. And I mentioned that I own no rights to the game. So I'm just giving a shout-out to those guys for keeping it alive. But I do feel complimented that the game continues to have legs. And then, even more so with Dragon Dice, the story there is that when WotC bought TSR, WotC decided that they were not going to publish Dragon Dice anymore. And a group of fans got together, incorporated, bought the rights to the game, and they've been publishing it ever since, polishing up the rules even further because of their experience in tournament play, releasing the expansion products, and I've been so impressed with the job they did with it. And last year, they licensed a game Tim Brown and I did, another dice game. They say that Dragon Dice is like their chess product, and then the next step down, like Go or maybe even checkers, would be Demon Dice, which is this thing they came out with last year. Well, next month, they'll be starting a Kickstarter for another dice game design of mine called Superpower Smackdown. And it's a kind of Yahtzee-based pub game, quick, fast, and furious, based on the idea that whenever superheroes meet for the first time, they always get in a big knockdown, drag-out fight for some reason. I'm thinking most recently for me, watching the Avengers and seeing Thor and Iron Man, or Thor and Captain America going at it, and Iron Man having to step in the middle. Is just this perfect example of that kind of thing. So this dice game is that. You can be a strength hero, a speed hero, a gear hero, a mind hero, or a mutant hero. They each have one slightly different effect when their icons come up in the game. But basically, you're just beating the crap out of each other. Every time you hit somebody, that person loses a die. You start with 5 dice. When you're down to 2, you're out of the game. And we're going to do a Kickstarter to see what quality of dice we can produce for it. So there you go. A quick advertisement, quick pitch for the next thing to come along. And silence.
When are
Sorry.
we going to get? When are you going to bring some dice to play test to play that at Coliseum?
You know what? I've been carrying it around with me. I've got this convention bag that I just keep stuff packed in, right? And one of the things is a stadium seat cushion from Gaming Hoopla. This reminds me of a couple of things that I want to mention. Scott, you guys mentioned that you have a barbecue once a year.
We do. We have.
You might want to check into DFW Nerd Night. They are a group of gamers that I just became aware of. They started out as an annual birthday party for one of their members, and over the years, they've turned into a monthly get-together at a local restaurant, or sometimes they get up to Chicago, or they're doing something in Indianapolis. But they've turned it into this charity event.
They're Dallas-based, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I heard of them. It might have been through you.
They said kind of modestly in an interview recently, we don't raise. We're not like the big guys. We don't raise a whole lot of money. We only raise like maybe $200 to $2,000 a month for local charities. Like $200 to $2,000 a month is not a lot of money. Well, they have their eyes set on doing like $100,000 in one day on an annual event. They did $75,000 with in coordination with another team last year. And a lot of what they do, though, isn't even raising money. They'll just, they'll have like a food drive, or they will show up at Ronald McDonald houses and just play Candyland or Monopoly or whatever with the family members of kids who are in a local hospital. So they've really enthused me. And what brought them to mind then was this stadium cushion that I got from Gaming Hoopla over in Janesville. That's another group of gamers that they run a convention twice a year. It's maybe a couple hundred people who show up. Every bit of money they raise goes to the American Cancer Society. And that's very, very cool. And one year, the first year that I did it, I bought one of their VIP packages, which lets you park like right next to the building, and somebody will come out and help you carry in all your stuff, and you get to get in 15 minutes before everybody else, and you get a T-shirt or a polo shirt, and you get you get a mug or a drink koozie, I guess it was, and you get this stadium thing, this stadium cushion. I had never even considered a stadium cushion before, but now every time I go to a convention or I show up at Coliseum Games, those plastic chairs are hard on an old guy's hips, and dropping that stadium cushion down is awesome. But
you're not eating enough Doritos, Les. If you did, it wouldn't be so hard on the chair,
Yeah, I suppose you're right there, but actually trying to lose weight. That reminds me, though, one other thing I need to mention. I started to mention a little while ago. I had put up a mini stretch goal that once we hit 400 backers, I would be giving $1 per backer to the to Feeding America, which is Popcorn Press's chosen charity. And yeah, we really like those guys a lot. We've got one book that Patrick Randolph, he's um, a doctor of teaching English as a second language. I think is what his doctorate is actually in, and he put together a poetry anthology that all of the income from that goes to a charity. And we were looking around, and Feeding America he wanted specifically to go to something that helped the homeless and the hungry, and we checked, and Feeding America's overhead is so low. We were given to a local office in Milwaukee. There's one in Madison as well, and then when we realized there's a national one, and we could just pitch in and have that go, I wish there were a worldwide one, but maybe it's not as necessary in some other first world countries as it is here in the United States, where we're a little more chintzy about public support. But I had that up, and one of our backers mentioned that violates the Kickstarter terms of service, which is completely, Indiegogo is great for charity. Kickstarter is not a place for charity. So we took that down, but we will be honoring it anyway. So we've got 490 backers. There'll be $490 going to Feeding America off the top. Well, Kickstarter and Amazon, of course, come off the top. But the very next thing that comes out is this money.
Very cool, Les. Very cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Kind of like what you were saying with the DFW thing too. What Jason was saying earlier about trying to put a better face on the RPG community. Everybody associates, with nerds and whatever. It's kind of nice to see something positive, come from that, and be interesting to see if it does become a worldwide institution, that the RPG charities will be competing with the Christian charities, which may not particularly like the RPG charities. I don't know.
That's actually a good point. And for what it's worth, I know that DFW has had charities begin to approach them to ask if they could run an event for them to help out. So I just think those guys really have their ducks in a row. And the whole thing is they get together and play games. It's just that the getting together to play games becomes an excuse for, while you're at it, why don't you bring some canned goods or maybe drop some money in the till.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, it is 12:34. I'm going to hang out here as long as anybody wants to, but I want to at least recognize the fact that it is 12:34.
I'm probably going to be dropping in a few minutes here. It's actually 1:34 here, and it's been one of those weeks where I would love to get a nice long night's sleep if I could.
What's that?
Yeah, I know. I don't know what it is anymore either. It's like a unicorn or a mermaid or something. Les, it's been amazing talking to you. Thank you. Dale, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Mike,
You too, Scott, and Mike.
I'm an aggressive Facebook friender. I'm gonna go hunt you guys and friend you on Facebook or something. But it was really cool talking to all of you. Looking forward to see some of the aftermath of the Kickstarter tomorrow. So congratulations, Les. Look like you really did well, and you should be proud of it, man.
Thanks very much. It's all fun. See you later.
You guys have a good night.
Be good.
So, Mike, thanks very much for showing up and chatting. And God, I can't wait to see your emergence stuff. Now that this Kickstarter is over, I'll have the past couple of weeks. I have just had no time to read. I'm looking forward to beginning to dig into your Fire Drake novels, and that sounds like a blast. I've read the first part of the first novel, and I like the character so much that you can expect to see some mentions on Facebook and Twitter and so on as I go through that.
Sweet, thank you. Drake was written as somebody who says the things you can't say.
Ah, awesome.
That was my whole thing when I was writing him. I was like, I want the guy that, you know, is able to come out and say, no, I'm going to say this. And everybody goes, oh, you're not supposed to say things like that. And he just goes ahead and does it.
Yeah, well, he's a fire Drake, you know.
That's exactly it. Who's going to tell him no?
And a federal agent, right? So,
Double threat there.
yep.
Mike,
All
did
right.
you ever read any of the Planetary comics?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. They were from, I'm trying to remember who was the original publisher, but they ended up being a group that came together that not only said that, you know, they said the things that needed to be said, they did the things that needed to be done. Like, oh, there's this horrible dictator who's, you know, killing women and children. Well, we're a team of a dozen superheroes. We're just going to go kick his ass and free that country. Yeah. And they're doing lots of things like that. And, of course, the world press, after they do this, basically they free North Korea is in one storyline. And the world press goes nuts, and the UN goes nuts and things like that. And they hold a press conference, and one of the characters just has a great line saying how this isn't the last time they'll do this if they have to. The line is, if I recall it, is like, the 21st century is a bad time to be a bastard.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
I'm sending out a follow-up Twitter post and Facebook post, just mentioning where we ended with this. This is definitely the best Kickstarter success I have had so far, and man, I just really appreciate everybody who's been involved, including you guys for showing up for this hangout at the end.
That was my pleasure.
Happy to do it, Les. Happy to be involved.
You know, Mike, I'll mention one of the biggest thrills about this has been meeting people like you, getting connected with authors that I wouldn't have known otherwise, and I look forward to friendship continuing well into the future. All right?
I appreciate that. Same here.
Is there anything else you guys want to say? Anything else you want to shout out? I need to stop saying shout out. I'm too old for that kind of language.
Yeah, next you're going to say go for it. So,
anything? Last thing you want to pitch or mention?
I'm just happy I could be involved with this. I really am. The invitation from you just took me by surprise, and I'm actually really, really happy to be involved. Very proud to be involved.
Cool. Thanks very much. All right. Well, I'm going to call an end to this broadcast, guys. And once again, thanks to everybody who has shown up to view, to the 4 viewers who are still hanging in the background. I hope we hit the comments that you wanted to have mentioned, and this has been a very cool experiment. Very much appreciate it, and we'll see you all around. I hope, stop by and say hi at conventions or online or whatever as we follow up with this. Take care, everybody.
Good night, Mike. It was nice to meet you.